Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to sit down with us for about a half hour, 45 minutes to talk about Symantec's Cloud SOC, or their CASB offering. I appreciate all of you taking the time, and hopefully you'll find the information particularly useful. I'd like to spend just a quick second. We actually have Mohammed Abdelnabi, who will be speaking with you today, and I'll introduce him in just a moment. But first, let me talk about Intuitive Technology Group. Intuitive's been around since approximately 2006, but our roots go back to the late 90s. We have a number of folks on staff who have been working with various Symantec products for at least back that far. I know I personally was an employee at one of the subsidiaries called Altiris back in '99, and certainly had a chance to get familiar with a lot of Symantec's technology. Over the years, the company has grown, and at this point, while security remains our main focus, we do actually have focus areas in big data, DevOps, and lean and agile management consulting. So certainly, as you think about projects coming up within your organization, keep us in mind. We, in fact, have a strong services team that does a lot of work for clients all over the country. And one of the leaders of our practice is Mohammed, and he's going to talk a little bit about what he's been doing since he joined with our group. We brought him in specifically for some endpoint management projects that we have with a client down in the Atlanta area. But he's spent a significant amount of time working on other projects as well in other parts of the country. And we've been absolutely thrilled with all the great work that he's done and the knowledge he's shared. And so today we asked him to share that with a broader group of our customers, that being the folks on this webinar. So I'm very pleased to introduce to you Mohammed Abdelnabi, and he can talk a little bit more about the specifics of today's agenda and all we're doing with the CASB presentation and the overview as well as demo. So with that, Mohammed, thanks for joining us today, and please feel free to take over.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is, Mike said, Mohammed Abdelnabi. I'm a senior systems engineer at Intuitive, and I am based out of Omaha, Nebraska. If you haven't been here, it's cold, but it's kind of nice. I have been a Symantec products engineer with a focus on endpoint management for more than 12 years. I am certified Symantec engineer in Cloud SOC and every version of Altiris ITMS, going all the way back to version 6. I also have about 12+ years of experience of managing Symantec Help Desk and then Service Desk products. And last but not least, I actually have also 8 years of experience in Symantec workflow. So as Mike said, we kind of expand on a lot of areas with the Symantec products. During the 12 years of my experience with the Symantec product, I managed small to large organizations, anywhere from 1,000 to 50,000 plus endpoints with a mix of Windows and Mac computers. Those environments were in the media, public education, and manufacturing sectors. So that's pretty much about me. So if everybody's ready, we're just going to go ahead and start our webinar. All right, so in this webinar, we will explore what happens to data when it leaves the premises and become mobile, aka in the cloud. I will also explain what shadow IT is, what is shadow data, and what is BRR, or Business Readiness Rating, and how to use it to review web applications. We will discuss some of strategies and their effectiveness in preventing shadow IT and data. And finally, there will be a short demo on how to use Symantec Cloud SOC to audit, detect, and protect your data in the cloud. So what happens to my data in the cloud? Well, the answer is very simple. It gets shared. The main purpose of having data in the cloud is to have a convenient way of accessing it from multiple locations and being able to easily collaborate with others. This, by design, opens the data to be shared with others. So is that a bad thing? Well, it depends. If there are no checks and balances against what can be shared and what not, then it is up to the user to decide what to share and whom to share it with. According to statistics, 23% of data in the cloud is inappropriately shared, and 8% of that is actually classified as protected data, like HIPAA, PII, PHI, and etc. If data is not appropriately managed and protected, it can grow out of the organization's reach, and at that point, it may be very difficult to unexpose the data. So what is shadow IT? Shadow IT is any application that is used without being sanctioned by the IT department. For the purpose of this webinar, we will only focus on data sharing applications. So why is it a problem? In the simplest terms, the organization loses its ability to protect its data from being exposed and used by unintended parties. As an example, think of a scenario where an HR person accidentally shares payroll data with everyone in the organization. Salaries are always a very sensitive topic in any organization, and nothing good typically comes out of publicly sharing all salary agreements. Another thing is opening the door to malicious activities. Using a shadow application means there has not been any vetting done or a security analysis to see if it meets the company standards. This is kind of the equivalent of responding to a Craigslist ads. You have no idea what you're walking into. Most of the time, it's an okay experience, but other times, not so good. And last but not least, it puts the organization at the risk of legal actions. A lot of times, organizations are required by privacy and other laws to protect the client's data. At that point, it does not matter if the data contains anything of interest to other parties. If it's classified as HIPAA, for example, it needs to be protected regardless. So how does it happen? Some of the reasons are lax security rules. This happens when an organization is not actively monitoring and setting policies against the use of unsanctioned applications. No data loss prevention culture. Again, this falls under the organization's willingness to invest in infrastructure and user education. Over-trusting employees. I've heard it many times before when managers would say, you know, we hire good people here, or we don't have to worry about anything. Everybody has been background checked. But again, that simply does not account for the fact that they may expose the company's data unintentionally. Disconnect between the IT department and other departments. Some users view IT as a roadblock. Not actively engaging with other departments will prevent the users from understanding decisions behind security measures. So why does it happen? Why do users revert to shadow IT? It circumvents the environment's restrictions. For example, in one organization, they had a USB drive restriction where only read writes were allowed. So some users started using their online personal data sharing accounts to get around the USB limitation. It's also convenience. The trend now is to be mobile and work from anywhere. Think of the users that need to take work home. It's much easier to put their files in the cloud and access them even from their mobile devices. Ease of collaboration. There is no need for multiple emails back and forth to work on the documents. Also, everyone will be working out of the same file version. No need to worry about anyone using an older version of the document. Files are automatically backed up in the cloud. No need to worry about making multiple copies of the data in case of a hardware failure. All right, moving on to shadow data. So shadow data is basically any data that is owned by an organization and been shared without their knowledge/permission. Again, to why that happens, there are so many reasons for that, but we will mention few. Again,
Mohammed,
think of the convenience.
I'm glad you brought that. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to just share that we've had that issue with a number of clients where oftentimes they've had legacy online applications. For example, they used to be a Box customer and they switched over to OneDrive, and they never communicated back to the security team to close the door on Box, and so we've had the end users continuing to use Box to collaborate outside. So again, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it really does give a little bit of color or situational awareness for the IT team that they have to get the knowledge of what's going in and out of the network on a regular basis.
Yeah, from my experience, the IT team, I mean, it's not intentionally done that they want to leave everyone out, but they're kind of sometimes focused and more concerned about security and all that stuff. But then the communication piece is not there to tell others, like, okay, if we don't do this, this is what's going to happen. You know, and that communication needs to be always open. You always have to involve your stakeholders so they would understand. And if an employee goes to a manager or a supervisor and say, hey, I really need this to work because X, Y, and Z, the manager should be able to say, well, the reason why we cannot allow this anymore, it's been blocked, is because of, and they should be able to answer to those questions for their employees. And that's where really the IT department needs to be engaged with all parties in the company or organization. So.
Great, thank you.
Yep, no problem. All right, so going back to shadow data. So why does it happen again? So think of the convenience factor we just talked about. It's much easier when the data is in the cloud. It just makes everyone, you can access it from anywhere, mobile devices, on the go, from your kid's soccer game, you can just get to it from anywhere. Or if you have a hardware failure at home or anywhere else, you can just even go to the library and work on your stuff from there. And again, no true security measures to stop it from happening, whether that there are no security policies around data loss prevention or no interest in the infrastructure investments. Allowing employees to use personal data sharing accounts, that's another big one. I've seen it in companies before where they would have, say, OneDrive for business, but then their employees are actually using their own OneDrive just because that's what they're used to. Another reason is the I made the data, therefore I own it mentality. Think of developers who may have wrote code for your organization. Some might feel that they own that code and it actually belongs to them and not the organization. Some might want to use solutions that are developed for your organization in their next place of employment, either as a leverage with a competitor or simply as a way of not starting from scratch on similar projects. The mentality is, why rewrite the whole thing when I can just modify it to fit the new project? And of course, there is always the malicious intentions, whether from insiders or outsiders. All right, so how would you prevent it? Is user education alone good enough? Statistics says that 80% of leaked/misused data was caused by non-malicious users. So why is it so hard to count on the 80%ers to do the right thing? Well, there are many factors. Lack of knowledge, something like I did not know that was not allowed, lack of experience, I did not know how to share a file with just one collaborator, so I just clicked on share with everyone. Not thinking of consequences, like I did not know that sharing those files would expose our data structure or our server naming standards and IP addresses. And last but not least, the human nature. We are all constantly making decisions throughout the day. Some researchers estimate that humans make an average of 35,000 both conscious and unconscious decisions a day. But as we know, not everything is always black or white. There is usually a lot of things that would fall within the gray area. And some people's gray area is about 2 inches, and some others are measured in the miles. I remember stories from when I worked for a large retailer tech support department. I had clients who had been phished, and a lot of times their story was, I thought they were scammers, but I went ahead and allowed them in my computer anyway, just because they were very convincing. Again, that's an example of our human nature. Now, take those stories as you may. Some might sympathize with those victims. Others might be more like, well, they should have known better. But at the end of the day, the incident happened and the malicious attack was a success. So what if you have an on-premise DLP solution? Is that enough? Well, on-prem DLP is a good start, but it does not give you visibility into the cloud applications. For instance, you cannot use on-prem DLP to reach into OneDrive or Google Drive and unshare all HIPAA files that have been already inappropriately shared. So if relying on if relying on user education and on-prem DLP is not enough, how can CloudSock help me? So there are many benefits of using CloudSock, but for the sake of time, we will mention few. To start with, it takes the human factor out of the equation. There are no more gray areas. It's either black or white, 0 or 1, allowed or denied. It exposes shadow IT. You now have security cameras on your front door, aka your egress points. You would know who's coming in and out of your house and what their background is via the use of BRR, or business readiness ratings, which we will discuss that during our demo. It's true that firewalls can give you some of that data, but it does not provide you the reputation of such applications. It stops data from leaving your premises. This is done with the help of gatelets, which again, we will talk more in details about those during our demo. It can reverse an exposure of shadow data. It can prevent future exposure by letting you know of files that are in the cloud that require DLP or data loss prevention policies but have none. Threat score-based policies, helpful for tightening security measures on certain risky users. Behavior-based detection. It uses machine learning to evaluate deviations from the user's normal patterns. Things like login location, time of the day, unusual download amounts, and so on. Sequence-based detection. This one is actually pretty cool. You can set up detections based on specific series of events. And again, we'll explore that during our demo. Threshold-based detection. For example, 2 million logins attempt within certain time frame, amount of data downloaded, location changes, and so on. All right, so I tried to make the talking points a little bit short so we can spend more time in our demo. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get that demo started. Just give me 1 second here to log in. If you don't use it for like 5 minutes, it logs you out automatically. So
I'm going to say, while Mohammed is logging in, I would also let all the participants know that if you'd like to send in some questions, please feel free to do so. We'll try to pick those up at the end, or I'll try to fit them in as they apply. So please do feel free to make this interactive. Thanks.
And let's just see if I can make this full screen. There we go. All right. So with the Cloud SOC, the strategy is to do, first you want to start with doing your audit. And the audit would basically show you all the applications of the cloud application that's been going through your network. So everybody's going to a cloud application, what they did there, the traffic and all that fun stuff. And the way you get your audit report is actually by either uploading your firewall log files or actually point it to a location where it can get it from. So here we have sample data that's been collected. And the first thing you will see here is what's called your audit score. And this is basically what the BRR score is. And for your overall audit score is a combination of the business readiness rating, or the BRR, for all the applications used in your organization, I mean in the cloud, and how many users are using those. So in here our score is 52. Over here you would kind of see some of the categories that's being used to calculate that business readiness rating, and we'll go into more details. It's a little bit more comprehensive than those. But this is just the 7 different categories that it goes under. In your audit report, the first page or screen that you see is just basically the summary. And you can change the date range. I think you can go all the way to 12 months basically. For now, we're just going to do 7 days. And from here, it's going to show you the top used services, the top 20, I would say. And then, let's see here, the locations basically, so where those services are coming in and out from in the world map, and then the top users that's using those services. And from here, you can change it from top used services to actually top risky services. So if you only want to focus on what is bad out there that we should be worried about, you can do it that way. On the services over here, now it gives you a little bit more details because it's going to show you all of your services, or all the cloud services that went through your firewall. So you can see all the ones and their ratings, and everything is listed over here. If you want to filter that based on risky apps or categories, so you want to show me, I want to only see file sharing apps, then you can do that, and then it would only show you the file sharing applications. Or if you want to only view file sharing with the high risk, then you can do it that way as well. That takes a second for it to kind of filter that for you. Here you go. So now you can see all the ones that they're considered high risk. Now you can click on each of those and it would tell you why it's a high risk. And that's when you get to see the comprehensive list of the criteria that's used to calculate your BRR, or the business readiness rating. So these are all the options that it kind of checks and tell you if that application supports those features or not. As you can see, it's a really long list of things. Now, I'm going to show you in a little bit how you can actually change that if you say you don't care about, multi-factor authentication, or, I don't care if it's utilized CAPTCHA or not. We'll explore that in a couple minutes. From here, it would actually show you the usage details. So who used it and all that fun stuff. And the destination, that's basically which countries it went through, the upload, the download, how many sessions it connected to that. So you can see all that in there. Going back to the summary. Let's click on something like, say, Google Drive. Over here, again, it would show you all the BRR details, but also it would show you here alternate services. So say you're looking at something else, not necessarily Google Drive, it can come over here and show you some other suggested same category applications that you can use and their score as well. So say if you have like an app that you're using that has like a lower BRR score, you can compare it and see if a similar services from this screen over here. And then under the users pane, you can basically see users activities, downloads, sessions, locations, destinations, all that stuff. But it's very helpful when you just want to filter based on, okay, I want to see the users with the high risk. So basically you have 17 users that considered high risk. So you can click on the user. Here you go. And then it shows you which apps that they use that would considered risky, and you know, the sessions, downloads, and all that stuff. And in the destination tab, you can actually filter based on like countries. So you can actually look at the map first and like, okay, I should not be having a business or any connections that's happening in Europe. So you can actually click on that and see what's taking place there. So say if you want to filter based on, we hardly have anything to it's a simple sample data. Let's see here. I think we had one in Germany. So when you filter based on that, it would show you the services. So it looks like it happened through TeamViewer that had a connection to someone in Germany. I mean, again, that could be an accepted behavior, or it could be out of the norm to have something there. So that would be kind of up for investigation to decide if that was a justifiable connection or not. So going to the, let's see here, the BRR profile. So this is basically your global profile, or that's kind of like the default one that comes in. And you can edit that one. And from here, you can decide on all those 7 categories and all those different things that the BR gets calculated if you really care about these things or not. So say you did not care much about if a site utilizes CAPTCHA, you can uncheck that. You can look at, like, say, multi-factor authentication, and you can say, you know what, this is a must-have for my application. So you can slide that to the must-have. Something else, again, like password quality rules, you know, you want to have it must-have. Or something like, you know, like location, or, you know, like controls IP ranges from where login is allowed. You can have that as nice to have, or you can slide it all the way to don't care. And that would change the calculation of your BRR or the business readiness rating in applications, and overall would affect your total score for your BRR. So from your audit pane, you can also generate reports. So when you generate, there is the infographic. This is kind of like a nice one-page type of a thing that shows you your audit score. You know, what's the top 5 riskiest services, you know, the users, basically top 5 users, so who's using, you know, those applications, and just like a one-page type of thing to give you like an overall kind of very quick summary of your audit reports. The other one you can actually do is the generate audit reports, and that basically is going to give you a lot more details of what's happening in your organization. So risky services, you know, how many users are using those risky services, most used services, and that's this is kind of beneficial, say, if, you know, as Mike mentioned earlier, if you have both subscription of Box and, you know, OneDrive, and some people or some users or employees keep saying, we're using Box all the time, you can actually use this to say, well, according to our inventory and statistics, you know, Box is only being used, you know, very rarely, and therefore it does not justify keeping both solutions on hand. So there's a lot of pages there. I'm not gonna, you know, bore you with going through all of them, but just know it's there, and it's a very comprehensive report. So this is for the audit part of the Cloud SOC. The next thing after you do your audit, now you want to sanction or block your applications. And so say when you came to something like Pinterest and you wanted, through the audit, you want to view it. Actually, let me go to services here. We'll look at something like GitHub. As you're looking through those applications, you can actually come here and tag those, so later on it'll be easier to identify what you want to do with those. So you can say sanctioned, unsanctioned, block. You can do your custom tags as well. If you can say okay for now. So say you're still kind of reviewing it, you haven't really made your decision, you can create something that would, you know, when you go back and look at services and applications, you'll be able to filter based on those tags as well. I believe it's one of the filtering. Yep. So you can filter through that and just say, okay, which one did I say it's okay for now? So you can go back and, you know, filter through those, and it's still filtering here. So there you go. So you have your 2 that they were tagged as okay for now. All right, so moving on to the detect model. And detect is actually pretty cool. This is where you get your incidents and locations and users and all that fun stuff. So basically when you have, like say we have one incident that happened, when you click on it, it would tell you this is what the threat score basically and how it's calculated for each user. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. So it tells you what happened there and why they have that kind of score. The incident over here, and I have to change that maybe to 1 month. So it tells you it was a brute force login attack. And again, that's just, you know, sample data, so we're fine, don't worry about us. And then location where it took place, you know, all that stuff. Under the preferences is basically where you create your incident detector. So basically, when an event happens, you know, that's when it gets detected and it creates an incident for you to review. So there are 2 options or 2 settings you can do under the detect. The first one is actually the threat score. So every time a user does something that's against the policy or something that's not allowed, it changes their threat score. So on each one, it has kind of a different way how you can calculate the threat score or the way of the threat score based on the policy. And again, we'll see that in a minute. In here, you just set up kind of like your ranges. What do you consider a low threat score? What do you consider medium, and what do you consider high? So say if you're just starting with a cloud SOC and you wanted to make sure that, you know, the low would be kind of all the way up to 72, and the high is going to be, you know, in the 90, then you can do it that way. Or say you really want to capture a lot of things, you can put the low all the way down and the medium, you know, or the high in a much wider range. Just keep in mind when you do that, you're going to have a lot of policies that's going to trigger based on those scores. So again, just keep that in mind when you're playing around with the threat thresholds. All right, so under the incident detectors, you have, as we said before, the threshold based. So that's basically, you know, with the threshold based, it's kind of how many times within a certain amount of time. That is kind of your general policy. So if you have, you know, location changes within, you know, 15 minutes or 20 minutes, you know, there is no possible way somebody was, you know, for example, in Omaha, Nebraska, and then was in Atlanta like 2 hours later, then that would trigger an incident for you. Suspicious logins, you know, you're logging from too many places at the same time. Invalid logins, that's a famous one, you know, just kind of like how many times you tried to log in within a certain time. Invalid logins across users. So if you see like a lot of users getting invalid logins during like 1 minute, you know somebody's just trying to brute force their way through it. Megabytes downloaded basically or uploaded, that can, you know, indicate there is some sort of a file, you know, extraction that's happening if somebody's trying to get files off of the organization and load them or send them to someone else. Behavior-based, this is basically all machine learned. So it looks at your patterns and your behaviors and kind of build a profile for you from there. So say if you typically only download, you know, or share like 2 files a week, and then out of nowhere, it sees that you're sharing about 80 files a week, then that kind of triggers an incident over there. The confidence level is basically how confident the detector is before it can say, yes, I'm pretty sure there is something happening here. The lower the number, the more it's going to trigger. The higher the number, the less it's going to trigger. So if you set it at 20%, the behavior-based would be like, it sees that you did like, say like 5 files, and it would say, oh, I think there's something wrong there, create an incident. On the other hand, if you set it too high as like 95 or 100% or 99%, then it would hardly trigger and might be too late to catch something by that. Semantic by default recommends leaving that at 90%. That seems to be kind of like the sweet spot for those kind of triggers. As you can see, there's a lot of different ones over here you can depend on, or you can enable or disable. All right, and then threat-based. So this one is kind of basically blocking. So if you have like a file mismatch, so the attachment says it's a text file or .exe, and then the file is actually a different format, then this is when it's gonna trigger this rule over here. Same thing if there's a virus violation. So there is a virus infection on a file or an email or something like that, you know, it would be detected in here. And the importance over here, basically, if the more you slide it, or the higher the importance, I should say, the higher the threat score would be assigned to a user. So say if you have it in importance, say they'll get about like 4 points added to their threat score. But if you have it in importance or critical, it would actually add like 10 points to their threat score. So this is, again, up to the organization how they want to set up their threat scores, and, you know, how how tight or, kind of wide range they have things to be open. Sequence-based is one of my favorite ones. You basically can set up a sequence of events to check for users. So like in this one, for example, it looks at all sources, so that's basically coming from anywhere for all users, services at 365, and your object would be file, so what they're doing, and then share. So, and then if they wait 30 seconds and they go through the same thing and then unshare the file, then that would trigger an incident in your detect. So that's basically trying to catch someone who is trying to, say, create files, share them, unshare them, and then delete them. It catches that kind of sequence-based behavior, which is, again, it can be customized to be very complex ones. Let me see here.
Mohammed, I'm glad you brought this up because, again, this shows the power of the workflows you can build into this tool and ultimately the ability to customize rather than just take things straight out of the box, but you can modify for your environment. So also, if I can just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say it's a very powerful tool, and like, just for the sake of the time, again, I'm just like, talking very fast through it, and I'm just scratching the surface with it, but there's like 100 other things I can think of that can be used, not just again to protect you from shadow IT and shadow data, but can also be used to kind of reevaluate your infrastructure and your environment and see what's really being used and what's not being used. And that always definitely, results in a lot of savings for organizations because, again, you don't have to be paying for services you're not using anymore.
That's an excellent point, and from an operations perspective, makes all the sense in the world. I think another portion, and I saw a comment come across on this one, is the fact that this has implications as well for compliance and GDPR, that you can identify where data might be leaving the European zone and be able to then prevent that from happening. So it has some very strong implications for board level decisions as well as for things within IT ops or within security ops. So thank you for that comment. I missed who brought it in, but excellent point.
Yep, totally agree. All right, so that's pretty much for your detect module. Now you move on to your protect, which is, again, a very, very powerful tool to use. And I'm gonna try to kind of speed up a little bit because I know we're coming kind of close to our end here. So in the policies, and I'm gonna show you the policies real quick, you can have blocked users, so someone whose threat score is really high and they can get blocked. Alerts is basically when something happened and then it gets blocked. For the policies, we're just gonna show real quick. You have the content IQ profile. So this is basically, again, it's a very, very cool feature of Cloud SOC. All what you have to do here and go in and say, all right, I want you to check for risk type. Is it a FERPA, HIPAA, PCI compliance, or PII compliance? And then you apply that in your protect policies, which we're going to see in a second. Here. And then that would automatically check for your files that's out in the cloud. The other thing you can also do, go back here, you can, in the rules, you can do it by content type. So is it a business? Is it computing? All these kind of categories, you can use that. Dictionary, you can have a custom dictionary looking for certain words, or predefined dictionary, all the words that, applies to the energy sector, or like, any of these ones that you want to use. File format, I really like this one because from here you can say, I wanted to check for database file format. You really don't have to know which format. You can say all, and then it's going to go in and check for all file formats that's considered database format. So you don't even need to know or make sure that you're capturing all formats out there that's related to database. You can do it that way. All right. And then a couple more here real quick. Regular expression, you can do that. Terms predefined, so if you have certain words, again, you're looking for. Training profiles, these are pretty cool. You can't really see that from here. I'll show it to you here in a second. So training profiles, basically, say you have special documents in your organization that it's not easily identified. So what you do, you can upload 5 of those documents, and actually CloudSock would learn those kind of documents and create rules around that training profile. It's a little bit more complex than that, but just again, for the sake of the time, I'm just kind of breezing through some of that stuff. So your policies here, let's see here. Let's create one new policy. And then the policy type, you can do access monitoring via SecureLets, and we'll talk about that here shortly. Shadow discovery, data exposure through SecureLets, access enforcement via gatelets, file sharing, gatelets, and all these different things or policies you can create. So gatelets and SecureLets, let's go that real quick. So SecureLets are basically your data at rest protection type of a thing, and these are the supported ones as of now. I know Symantec has been adding more and more as we go, but this is basically allow you to go in and even sometimes look at files that say classified as HIPAA, but has not been protected by any policies. So that would show you like a future exposure type of a thing. And that's one of the things in the audit options, or under services, sorry. So from that, you can go and create a policy even before those files have been exposed. So you know they're sitting out there, they're at the risk of being exposed, they haven't done it yet, you have a report of them, you can protect them before anything happens. Gatelets is basically your data at motion type of a protection, and those there's like hundreds of those basically. And typically you would only enable the ones that you need to monitor, and the CloudSock would only monitor the ones that they've been enabled. So if say file to send is enabled, but what's this one? eBay is not enabled, then it would only check for traffic that's going file to send and not eBay. And the way to enable those, it's super easy. You just click on it basically. Okay, we'll stick, and it just say activate app. Okay, and then you just say, once you activate it, you have to update the pack file for it to go through the gateway, basically. And just click activate, and you see it's done. And the way you direct the traffic through the gateway is by either installing the reach agents, which is the easiest way to do, because then whenever you enable a new gatelet, you're not worried about going back and modifying the pack file. And the other option, again, would be a pack file or a pack URL through your browser proxy settings, which, you know, depends on the organization. That may or may not be the easiest way of doing that. So, and you use those to basically capture the traffic, you know, and you detect and whatnot, or create the policies to block or allow things to happen. With the SecureLets, again, going back to that, even if you notice the file has been exposed or like been shared with so many people more than what needs to, you can actually unshare the file through the secure lists very easily by just saying, okay, remove the sharing link. So again, you can do a lot of powerful things with this. And the last thing I'm going to show here real quick is the dashboards. So basically, this is where you have your reports and everything. And this is customizable. You can create your own dashboards. Each user can create their own dashboards to fit whichever need that they want. One of my favorite one is actually this one over here, the compromised cloud services. And this is basically anything that's in the news. It would be listed here. And that would show you basically, you know, the magnitude or how much it's a widespread issue out there if you don't have something to protect you from such events. All right. With that being said, that's our webinar for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for the opportunity to share with you some of the benefits of leveraging Symantec's Cloud SOC CASB to protect your organization from both shadow IT and data. Mike, I'll turn it back to you for Q&A.
Absolutely. I tell you what, for the sake of time, if you would like to reply via the chat window for the next minute or two, that'd be great. Otherwise, please feel free to email me at the address right there on the screen, and I'd be happy to have a follow-up conversation with you and get you the information that you need. But otherwise, I'd like to thank Mohammed for spending this time and rolling through the environment and talking about how the product works. I did get a question, what is the performance impact of our Cloud SOC solution? Mohammed, would you have any thoughts on that?
As far as the network goes, or as far as like on the firewall?
I think we're going to have to take a guess unless we get some follow-up clarification. The question was asked anonymously, but let's.
Oh, okay.
So we might want to just address it however you think is most appropriate.
So the cool thing, I mean, again, if you're looking at the firewall logs and everything, you can actually just upload those files to your audit, and then it's completely in the cloud. It's not anything on your local network, basically. I haven't seen any impact or any complaints of how it slows things or anything, because it's all analyzing your data and everything in the cloud. So it's not really impacting anything on site, basically. And I know we have a couple of big clients that they're using it, and they're all over the place as far as location and multiple states, and we have not heard any issues as far as the impact goes.
Beautiful. Okay. At this point, I'll make one last call for questions, and then otherwise, as I mentioned earlier, we have a number of very skilled folks on our team, and we would love to help you out in terms of either identifying areas where we might be able to provide you with some service or point you in the right direction if there are things you need for self-help. In addition to this, this presentation is being recorded, and we will post it to our YouTube channel. I would encourage anybody who has further questions. We do have, I think, 2 or 3 other videos on our YouTube channel that go into selecting and implementing CASB and DLP solutions, so they're very much closely related to this. And feel free to dive into those. I did get a couple of other questions. Mohammed, one of them is, can Cloud SOC ingest data from AWS VPC flow logs, provide audit reports, dashboards, etc.?
Yes, let me go back here real quick and show you. So let's see. So when you're setting up device logs, basically, you do add new data source. So you can do web upload, SFTP, and you can do it from an Amazon or an S3 data store as well. So these are the data sources that can be used for that.
Nice. Nice. And then the follow-up question asking if it's possible to get a demo login to give this a shot. Absolutely. We can follow up with you and make sure that you get access to a demo environment to drill in a little bit. So happy to help you with that as well. So we will take that under advisement and make sure that we get you that that information. So with that, I know we're coming right up to the top of the hour, and out of respect for everybody's time, I'll end the question at this point and thank everybody. And I wish you a very happy rest of your afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on our next webinar. Goodbye, everybody.
Yep, thanks, everyone.